Hey, Kevin Martin here, your UT admissions guy. And in this video, I'm going to discuss some tips for building a reasonable college list. In the next video, I'm also going to share about building a debt optimal college list and the consequences of having, too much student loan debt and taking out too many loans. So this video is intended primarily for Texas residents, but if you are a Texas resident and you're only applying to schools in-state, this video may not be applicable for you. I have in mind here students who are applying to kind of a nationwide portfolio of universities, and I'm going to share some errors and pitfalls to potentially avoid, in addition to some best practices I've seen my own clients make, but also students reporting their experiences on places like Reddit. So one thing I've seen that's universally true is families underestimate the time that college applications require, especially if they're applying for schools beyond Apply Texas. A reasonable list includes those that optimize for saving time, that decrease anxiety and stress, and applying mainly to schools where you have a realistic admissions chance and the ability to cover most or all of your costs in order to minimize debt. Previously my philosophy had always been, right, if you want to apply, go for it. It's better to apply in the fall and sort everything out in the spring rather than regretting not trying and applying for your dream school, for example. It's only after working for about 10 years that I'm, for the first time, actually recording a video about the college list, and I also have a lengthy blog post that provides complimentary material, and so this video acts as an overview. And this isn't necessarily intended for students specific to the state of Texas, but it's important to acknowledge what public universities and options you have in your own backyard. In Texas, we're really fortunate, and sometimes families, I think, lose sight of how we really do have an excellent public university system that has a variety of reasonable cost options. Of course, like many students dream of enrolling at UT Austin and Texas A&M, and they can't imagine their lives without being a student there. But we have many high-quality opportunities relative to other states. And I'll kind of make fun and tease Oklahoma a little bit here. So Oklahoma University, OU, is obviously the flagship campus in the state of Oklahoma, and it's like their best university, public university by far. Yet it consistently ranks much lower than UT Austin, Texas A&M, of course, but also even UT Dallas and Texas Tech and the University of Houston, depending on the metrics and specific majors. And so if you're born in more rural states like South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, or even more populated ones like Arizona, New Mexico, Oregon, Massachusetts and Connecticut, your options are significantly more limited than if you're a resident of Texas, California, New York, Illinois, North Carolina that have, extensive and affordable public options. Texas also has a really good distribution of research and teaching universities throughout the state of Texas that produce a more accessible environment than, say, neighboring states like Louisiana or Arkansas that have fewer options and they're not distributed as evenly throughout the state. And so every year, I have high-achieving Texas residents clients who apply to and they gain admission to universities nationwide, especially for business and computer science. I interviewed one of my former clients who's going to be an incoming UT Austin class of 2024 computer science student. You can see that in a few previous videos. And they actually crunched all of the numbers, and this student applied to a variety of universities. They got into places like Berkeley and UCLA, and they decided that UT Austin, even a regular admission, is a much better value for the degree. And so, I have clients every year, they're getting into Michigan and Illinois and Georgia Tech and North Carolina and even Rice or Southern California, and overwhelmingly, almost all of them enroll at UT Austin, and even those who don't choose UT are going for like Texas A&M, they're going for scholarship and honors at UT Dallas, they're going for similar offers at places like Texas Tech or even Texas State, or they're seeking generous aid packages for private universities closer to home like SMU, TCU, or Baylor. I do have clients that will enroll sometimes at kind of mid-tier flagship campuses like Arkansas, Indiana, Alabama, Arizona, that are more generous with their merit scholarship and also offer, in-state tuition waivers. I also understand that there's a tendency to simply apply to see where you get in and that you only have one shot at your college applications. But like college admissions just takes so much work. And for me, when I see like 90% of students that are aiming for UT end up at UT anyways, it's like, what's the point in applying to 15, 18, or 20 schools? So I'm just going to run through a list of sort of best practices I've seen, and I'm going to kind of throw this at you kind of quickly. And again, this is with my experience working in college admissions for 10 years now. And even though my business specializes in admission to UT Austin, my clients have gotten into, I think, like 2/3 of the US News top 100 universities. And so I've just kind of seen what the admissions outcomes look like for high achieving Texas residents who are going for UT Austin and are a match there. So my first piece of advice. A reasonable list of schools for a Texas resident includes, of course, UT Austin, but also Texas A&M and UT Dallas. I know those aren't like the favorite universities of a lot of students, but they're great educational opportunities at a reasonable cost. Maybe 1 or 2 private universities if you want, and then like a maximum of 3 or 4 out-of-state universities like your Michigan, Illinois, and then limit it to like no more than say 2 or 3 of these high-reach schools where in the event that you are fortunate to gain admission that you might consider paying the full cost at a place like MIT or Princeton or Stanford. My second piece of advice is to first apply to your Texas universities on Apply Texas. Next, prioritize universities that have early deadlines, especially if you're applying early action, early decision, followed by your common application universities or the University of California Insight questions if those are required. And then depending on your energy and time management, complete your final applications that require unique supplements that you can't repurpose from previous submissions. One thing that happens, especially during senior year, is students are getting tired, they're getting busy. October, November, AP courses are in full swing, and they simply don't have the time to do their college applications anymore. So it's totally okay to remove universities if you're just kind of running out of steam towards the end of senior year, fall semester. Number 3, avoid the just to see if you can get in fallacy. Be wary of adding too many high-reach schools or those that offer little to no aid, generally for non-residents. Fourth, and similarly, it's rare for a university to be both like prestigious and top 50, but also offer generous merit aid for middle to high income students. There's often a trade-off between cost and quality. 5, apply to at least one school where you're 100% guaranteed admission based on your grades and rank or your test scores. I call this an assured school or a security school, and not necessarily a safety school. I consider a safety school a university where you might be overwhelmingly likely to get in, but it's not a 100% chance. So for example, if you're in the top 15% and you have a 1600 and you're applying to UT Dallas and you're not guaranteed admission by being the top 10%, yeah, it's like a 95+% chance that you're going to get into UT Dallas, but that is not by definition a security school because they don't guarantee admission or scholarships to anyone outside of the top 10%. 6, a safety school is not a safety school if you're not 100% guaranteed admission, nor is it a place where you could conceivably enroll, right? And so, again, that's why it's important to have this subcategory of a security school. And I don't see this kind of conversation happening enough on applying to college, or I'm getting applicants who are only applying to A&M, UT Dallas, Texas A&M, where they might have an overwhelmingly good odds of getting in, but it's not guaranteed. 7th, I see this a lot. Avoid the "I can't stand it here" fallacy. Students say, "I just can't wait to get out of Texas." But it's a big state, and it's unlikely worth the cost to enroll out of state just because you want to leave Texas. And every year I have transfer students that are messaging me who have even got into great universities in Virginia or North Carolina or California, and they say, "Oh, I got to get back to Texas. It's crazy expensive. The pandemic's occurred." So often it can help to be close to home, but I totally understand if you don't want to be too close to home. I've already mentioned, but number 8, avoid the "it doesn't hurt to try" fallacy. Universities or programs that admit less than 8% of their applicants are reaches or high reaches for everyone. That includes some of UT's honors programs like Dean Scholars or Turing, but also common universities like Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, MIT, Columbia, Yale, that admit very, very few of their applicants. Even if you're like an exceptional superstar international champion in something, these are still going to be reach schools pretty much for everybody. Next, every university on your list needs to offer something unique. I especially see this with computer science and business students where they send almost identical lists to me that are composed largely of top 20 US News universities where, to be honest, there's little chance of realistically enrolling, especially compared with offers from UT Austin or Texas A&M. This next piece of advice sounds like common sense, but research particular resources, courses, research labs, study abroads, student organizations or professors that have, opportunities available at that campus that may not be available at UT Austin or other places that you're applying. Doing this kind of homework will help answer the question, like, why this university, when you have to submit that supplement if it's required? Because you need to have particular reasons for applying. And if you can't find those particular reasons and you can't write a 500-word essay about why you want to attend the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, like maybe you shouldn't be applying to Michigan or Baylor or other universities if you're struggling to, find reasons to apply. My 11th piece of advice is to substitute. So rather than add, substitute reach and high reach schools for targets or safety schools where you have, say, a greater than 80 or 90% chance of gaining admission and a decent shot at scholarships, honors programs, or viable options for out-of-state tuition waivers. 12. You need a realistic scenario for enrolling at every university on your list. So if you have a list, go down and say, like, if I don't get into UT Austin, then maybe Arkansas or Indiana is where I want to go. And assess these hypotheticals. For example, would you ever pay full tuition at California, Berkeley if you were to gain admission at UT Austin? Or would you enroll at Indiana or Purdue relative to Texas A&M engineering, for example? Now, oftentimes the answer is no, and I've just seen in practice that dozens of families are just not enrolling at all of these universities that they end up applying to. 13. A common mistake I see students make is they're overweighting pre-law or pre-med whenever they're assessing their options. They'll ask me, like, is UT a good school for law or a good school for pre-med? And the answer is you can go to law, graduate school, medical school from just about any university, even earning almost any degree, right? Even medical school, there's students from liberal arts, business engineering that will, not that many, but they will go on to medical school later on. You don't need to be a biology or biochemistry major to enroll at medical school, nor do you need to study political science or history or philosophy to go to law school. Anybody can go to law school. There is no prerequisites. And 14, as time goes on, your list should shrink rather than expand. So if your list in the summer has 18 schools, by the fall, that list needs to get down to 13, 12, maybe 10 or even less. So you shouldn't be adding schools unless you've already completed all of your applications. You still have time, you still have application fees in the budget, and you're willing to be like, yeah, I'm ready to apply to a few more schools. But especially in that middle process where you're in writing your essays, the list should be shrinking or at least staying the same. 15. Apply to no more than 15 schools and avoid shotgunning. Shotgunning are these applicants who are applying to 20, 25, sometimes 30 universities. Sometimes students might just win the lottery and they get into one of these, kind of dream universities. But I've also seen many more students who, when they apply to 20 or more universities, they're just like, my essays weren't very good. It was super stressful. And my approach is it's much better to submit 8 of your best applications than 20 mediocre ones, because you're going to be competing against other people that are submitting their best efforts, right? And 16. Another mistake I see families make is they place too much emphasis on U.S. News and World Report rankings. No ranking is perfect, and it's better to consult a wide variety of rankings beyond U.S. News. Things like the Times Higher Education World University rankings, Supermoney's Best Return on Investment, Forbes' Best Value Colleges, Colleges That Change Lives, which is a nonprofit advocacy network, and Niche also has a lot of kind of variety of different rankings, especially those for specific majors. Next. Don't fall in love with a dream school and tying your self-worth to that particular admissions outcome or applying solely to 1 or 2 dream schools. So if you're not 100% guaranteed at Texas A&M or UT Austin, then you need to expand that list to include more universities like Texas Tech or Houston, for example. 18. It's also important to distinguish the number of universities you're applying to from the number of unique applications that are required. For example, the University of California has 1 application, 1 set of essays for all of their campuses. And so if you're applying to 6 UC campuses, that is the equivalent amount of work as, say, applying to a place like Princeton or Stanford, which has extensive application requirements. There's other universities like Harvard, Dartmouth, Penn, Johns Hopkins that usually have fewer supplements. And so whenever you're doing your college list, it's also important to see how much word limits or essays are additionally required. And so if you're looking for places to trim, especially during that fall senior year, you can start to knock off some of those high-reach universities that might require a lot of time and effort. 19. Consider applying to no more than 3 out-of-state flagships. Like I'll see a list, with the usual suspects at UT, but then they'll also have like Michigan, Illinois, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Washington. It's like they've just selected the kind of the top, 50 or 75 universities, or say like, 8 of the top 20 public flagship schools. When again, the reality is if you're a Texas resident, it's almost certain that you're going to end up enrolling at a Texas university. So my last 3 tips. If you're applying to one of the UC campuses, you're like, I want to go to Berkeley, you may as well apply to 4 or 5, right? Like, of course, they cost application fees additional for each university, but it's all the same application. So if you're going to go through the problem or the stress of doing, these 4 350-word essays, you may as well apply to a few of them. The other thing to consider is that there's practically zero possibility that you're going to get financial aid or a California residency, and a UC education is just going to set your family back at least $250,000. So if these would place great strain on you and your family, especially during COVID-19 when parents' economic prospects or employment is a lot more uncertain, then maybe just consider foregoing applying to the University of California if you're not already a California resident. 21. If you have multiple interests, select different majors or different and unique programs at your universities rather than putting all of your eggs into the same academics basket, right? So I've seen lists with like 15 computer science programs, right? And although it is true that computer science is very popular, many universities have specific programs that may fit interdisciplinary interests or also offer something that's unique and different that may not be available elsewhere. That's another way to help, trim down the list, but also answer some of those like why this university questions. My final piece of advice is be wary of prestige and name brands, but not for some of the usual reasons you might think. This links into also applying to different majors at different universities. I'll use the University of Pennsylvania, for example. So they rank number 11 on Times Higher Education ranking of universities in the world. They're consistently in the top 20 on US News. Yet they rank number 37 for engineering, which is 2 spots lower than less selective and less expensive universities like Purdue. So some of these most selective, especially Ivy League universities, aren't necessarily good at every program. Similarly, Illinois ranks 23rd for engineering despite being within the top 50 globally. I like to use the example of Oklahoma State because they have an especially strong aerospace engineering program that's comparable to Michigan or Notre Dame or Virginia, despite being less rigorous than other engineering majors at Oklahoma State or sort of their overall rankings. Even like Wichita State, for example, ranks number 5 for aerospace engineering, which is higher than UT Austin. These are universities I'm not really seeing on a lot of college lists. So really doing a lot of homework on the front end can help create a reasonable college list that can get you a high quality education and hopefully graduate with minimal debt. So on that note, I know this was a long video. I thank you for sticking around. My next video will be a discussion about student loans. As always, if you like this content, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm still taking on first-time freshmen and transfer clients, so you're welcome to complete the questionnaire in the information section of this video. If you have any questions, of course, the easiest way to reach me is emailing me directly at kevin@texasadmissions.com. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.